I've been sent a Your Shout video by Toby. Thank you very much indeed, mate. It's an encyclopedic breakdown into West Ham's finances, but more precisely, it's regarding our ability to make transfers, our incomings and our expected outgoings, and how we might look to fund more than the one deal, or no deal, should I say, that some of us are suspicious that we're going to do. And I'm glad he sent it in because it gives me an opportunity to have a little rant, if you like, a little worry over why we've not done anything yet. Which I'm hoping Toby's going to go on. I say I'm hoping. I've listened to it. I know what he says. Who am I trying to kid? Look, he's going to go on to explain where the money's going, basically. But why haven't we done anything yet? Because I'm finding this very, very frustrating. I thought there was an urgent need before the Newcastle game. Following the Newcastle game, I expected it to be absolute outright urgency. The story getting peddled out beforehand was that we will look to sign somebody within the next couple of weeks. But this is a week ago. So a week of that 2-week deadline, let's say, self-imposed deadline, has already elapsed. But even then, I was thinking, why put that? Why would you say 2 weeks? Now, we know we were going for Tarkowski. Was it a case of them thinking, oh, it's going to take us 2 weeks to get the Tarkowski deal over the line? Forget for a second that he doesn't want to come. And regardless of that, why would you set those sort of limits on yourself? Why would you not just go out there and say, if you genuinely wanted something, I'm going to go and get him today. I'm gonna make Burnley an offer they can't refuse. I'm going to make Tarkowski an offer that he can't refuse. I'm not going to incrementally up the bid for 25 to 27 to 30 to 30 to blah, blah, blah. All of that sort of stuff. I was worried that we had set ourselves a time frame. And a time frame which really sort of allowed for a loss, or 2 losses, or 3 losses. Depends when you watch this. If you get this update on your phone late, you might watch this after the Newcastle, after the Arsenal game, and you might be looking at more than 1 loss. But I thought, if what we've decided is we need a set position that's going to really help out the team, we need a centre-back, is the story, and that will really help the team out, then why are we waiting? Why dither? Why dilly-dally? Now, I'm aware that David Moyes is called Dithering Dave. It may be partly down to him. It may be partly down to the owners. Actually, having said that, we know that he already has highlighted a centre-half that he wants, which is Tarkowski, and the owners are not getting him, not able to get him over the line, which I understand. I do think it's a slightly unrealistic target for the 2 reasons I mentioned before. Number 1, Burnley don't want to sell, and he's an England international. Number 2, he doesn't want to come. But you'd think if Moyes has got a list, it's not a list of 1. A list of 1's not really a list, is it? It's more of a name, a scribble. So I'd imagine he's got a list. So why are we not immediately down to the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th? And then some more information gets leaked. Oh, we're looking at a centre half in Europe. We're going to look in continental now. Forget the old poor old championship. We said we were going to look in a championship. We've gone Premier League at Burnley. Now we're going continental. The old championship's going to be getting a complex. So, well, that's a very, very bizarre thing as well. Just get the deal over the line. And, of course, then the worry is, and this is what Toby's going to speak about in a second, and something that I do find very interesting. We all know that the centre-half is not enough. And I don't think we're only going to bring a centre-half in, by the way. I honestly do. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think we're going to go and bring... I can't think... whatever his name is, Alphonso Davies from Bayern Munich, who looks to be the best fullback in the world at the moment, doesn't he? We're not looking to bring him in, so I haven't got unrealistic expectations, but I expect us to bring more than 1 player in this window. Now, we know we've got some funds there to buy a player, which again is going to be broken down in just a second, but we also got a lot of money for wages. So where's the loan deal? Why do we seem to be waiting? It's almost like a paint-by-numbers way of signing footballers. Well, it's very laborious, very sloth-like. Okay, what we'll do is we'll get the centre-half in. Protracted, delayed. And then afterwards we'll bring the full-back in. Then we'll look for another... Oh, please! Because this is the sort of pace they're doing things at. Get the deals done. If anything should have given you a rocket up your jacksie, it's that performance against Newcastle. And whilst it was very nice to enjoy a win against Charlton, it's not really going to stand us in my favourable stead in terms of playing against Arsenal, who looked absolutely electric. What day is it now? Thursday. Myself and Gio were doing a review. Tonight, of course. Get the deals done. We can't afford to wait. We really can't. So, with that in mind, how are we going to finance more than one deal? We've sold Diangana, we have sold Ajeti, and we have sold... Who's the other one? I was doing my head. And Hugo. Sorry, beg your pardon. We have about 30 million quid. So, what I want to know is, bearing in mind we've only got 30 million quid, how on earth are we going to sign 3 players? Maybe Toby can answer.
Hello folks, my name's Toby. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some confusion I think that's going on, and obviously lots of frustration for all of us West Ham fans in the middle of what is a bit of a ridiculous window. Obviously we've recently sold Grady Diangana. It is stupid, moronic, classic Sullivan, and sadly exactly what we've come to expect. And it was unnecessary for a lot of reasons. But from those deals, obviously we got 18 million from him. We got 5.5, of course, for Ajeti, 2.5 roughly for Hugo, plus whatever add-ons. And the wonderful Roberto, who has thankfully left the building in what is the one and only solace that we fans can get this window. But there seems to be a bit of confusion amongst fans about what we're doing with our budget. So if you add those figures up for, the 18 for Grady, that's 5.5, the 2.5, and Roberto, and what have you, roughly you're looking at £26 million. Now, we know that we're bidding hard for Tarkowski from Burnley. Roughly 30 million at the moment, may go higher, of course. So how can we spend 30 million on a player when we've only got 26, if it's believed that we have no other money, and that's our budget? It seems impossible, right? Well, the good news is it's not. And, we're not spending our whole budget on one player. I know that sounds odd, but part of that is because we misunderstand how transfers work. We all believe that when you sell a player, you get X amount of money, and then you can go and buy a player for that same amount of money. So let's say you sell a player for 18 million, if we use Greg as an example, then we just go and buy a player for 18 million, and both of them equal out. And whilst ultimately that is true to a degree, that's not exactly how it all works financially. Now, I'm not claiming to be any expert, but there is a confusion amongst us fans about some things. So, I don't want to harp on Grady, but just as an example, 18 million comes in from a sale. That 18 million does get recorded as a wholesale, and it gets recorded for this financial year or this season for West Ham. So we have 18 million on the books, plus the other sales. So, but when you're purchasing a player, it works very differently. You don't, if we were to go and purchase Tarkowski as an example, that 30 million that we're trying to purchase him for, or whatever it ends up being, doesn't come off instantly. What comes off of our transfer budget for this season is an upfront fee, which ranges, every deal is different, but somewhere between 10% and maybe 33% or a third, right, roughly. So if we use Tarkowski's example, 30 million, and we had an upfront fee, and let's be generous, so let's say the upfront fee was 10 million. You then had 20 million to pay off. That remaining 20 million gets spread over the length of the contract. So let's say it was 5 years. you've got 20 million more of the transfer to be spread over 5 years. Now, one of those years is this year. So you get 1 year of that fee plus an upfront fee that comes off your transfer fee, your transfer budget, if you like, for this season. So if it's a 10 million upfront fee and we're saying 20 million for the remainder over 5 years, that's £4 million per season. So this year, 10 million upfront and a 4 million on top. So 14 million of our, let's say, $26 million budget would be going to Tarkovsky this year. So that means we might have more room to move than we think we do. And I'm not trying to be optimistic, I'm not trying to sell wishful dreams here, but that's roughly how it's going to look. And that's why sales have been the main focus for the board, especially Sullivan. How we endlessly seem to love selling a player more than purchasing one at times. And that's part of the reason. It's part of how they justify the finances, is that you can sell a player and all of that gets counted instantly. Even if it's being paid to you over several years, you're getting that whole amount now on your books. So it's all about what the books look like rather than reality. So we don't have all that cash coming in straight away. We just have it registered on the books. So sadly, there is some truth, a very, very small amount, of the idea that a sale can change your window. But as we know with the board, one truth never really adds up to the whole truth, and it is never really the full picture. So to give you an idea, as it stands, or as it stood at the end of last season, we had £87 million outstanding from previous transfers. Now, that is a scary figure, especially when you think about how much we have at the moment. We don't have any money for skins. This is the words we get told time and time again. So that also doesn't include Thomas Souček, who, of course, we believe somewhere between 13 and 16 million on top of the 87. So 100 million in outstanding transfer fees. Some of that will be helped by the people coming in, but that's why Sullivan and the board were so desperate for a sale. Now we have money coming in from TV and all those things, but our wages are more than what's coming in. So we keep getting told, so of course we've got to get our wages lower, and we have. We've sold a lot of players for a lot of high wages. We've also replaced people for a lot of wages. So we're in this situation where we sell a player who should never have been sold in Great Indian Ghana. It is an utterly stupid decision. It hurts our future. It hurts who we are as a club. We know how important the academy is to us, and we lose, the many years we could have got from Great Indian Ghana, who I truly believe would have been quality for us, and grown into something pretty special. Now, I'm not calling him world class, but he absolutely a quality first team player for us. And I think we'll prove that at West Brom. So to sell him, simply because, of course, we get told over and over again that we have to sell Felipe Anderson, Manuel Lanzini, Yarmolenko, and all the other players and names that you've heard touted over and over and over again. So there is some truth that a player sale helps. Because if, for example, we were able to sell someone like Felipe Anderson for 25, 30 million, only we get all that amount straight away, and only a portion of that is going to be used for this transfer window. Of course, the back end of that hurts us badly, which is why we've got this ridiculous over 100 million in unpaid transfer fees. And as we've seen with Haller's deal to Frankfurt, we're not so good at paying it back. And part of that is the football world. That is the way things work these days. It's not just us that's doing it. A lot of clubs do this. Some of them are much better at managing that and selling players for profits and things. But also, most owners invest. So that 100 million in transfers gets covered by some investment coming into the club from an owner. So the debts don't hurt you as much. So, absolutely, the board has a lot to answer for this. But with the transfer budget that we've got, and I believe that there is more than the 26 million that we've roughly accrued so far from sales, I believe that there's probably 10, maybe more million on top of that. And as we keep hearing again and again from the board's favourite website, there's money to be had when we need it. And they can find a way, they can find the money. Well, we need it. So, but the plan, the transfer plan, built on selling players that were overpriced when we bought them, have huge wages that haven't been able to be justified. And, of course, their form means that they're not key players for us right now. So we need to sell them. We don't want them. But trying to sell those players in flat market, as we know, and as we keep getting told, even though it's looking less and less flat by the day, means that only clubs in desperate situations are going to be buying them. And those with money. There's not too many desperate teams with money at the moment that are going to be coming for us, because frankly there's better value players out there that can do similar things. Don't get me wrong, Felipe Anderson's a quality player, as is Manuel Lanzini, but heart's not in it, no matter what we think. And yes, things can be improved, tactically changed and all the rest of it, but when their heart's not in it, you're never going to get the best out of that player. And frankly, I think we're both better off with fresh places for them to go. So what do? How do we get out of this desperation that's been created by a flawed plan and a flawed financial plan that's been going on for, well, realistically the last 5 years at minimum? The reality is that there are ways, and look, there's always ways, some of them are dodgier than others and all the rest of it, but actually there are quite legitimate ways to get out of this. We hear time and again that nobody wants to buy our players, and fair enough, they're not value. But there is interest in our players. It's been on loan. We know the owners aren't going to invest any more money, so that there's nothing going to be generated that way. So what can we do? Well, one of the best ways to move on players that are unwanted, or to change things, of course we can loan them out and that gets rid of your wages, but it doesn't get anything coming in. And if you've got that bit coming in, you could potentially get, so let's say, in the Tarkowski example, you could get a 30 million player for 14 million or 15 million within a current Windows budget. So with one big outlay, you can get 2 or 3 players coming in for the sale of one, just simply because of how money coming in is accounted for versus money going out in transfers. So with that in mind, there's something that I'm really surprised, not only us, but other clubs haven't done more of in a market that's affected by the pandemic. And a lot of that, and that's simply player exchanges. Now, these exchanges aren't free, it doesn't stop them, it doesn't mean that you're swapping players for free. In fact, if you look at one of the best examples of this recently, this window, would be Pjanic from Juventus moving to Barcelona and Arthur from Barcelona moving to Juventus. So players playing similar positions, different style of player, different ages and all the rest of it. Now, I think the fee for Pjanic was roughly €50 million. Pjanic is 30. He's a quality player, world-class player, frankly. But at 50 million, that's not his true value. I think he's worth less than that. 40 million, maybe even less. So there's a bit of manipulation going on there. Arthur, 73 million euro. Younger player, more value, but not a 70 million player. 50, maybe. 60 if you're generous. So why are these teams paying those sorts of fees when they're exchanging it with each other? It's quite simple. They're mutually benefiting. So they're both getting large amounts of influx of money coming in, and little of it is going out because both of them are, again, signing on longer deals, and that money is being spread out over as many payments as they possibly can. So there's minimal impact. And it's a way of balancing everyone's books. It also allows them to go out into the market and do more things. And for clubs like those who have massive debts, who make big transfers, it's the simplest way to manage everything. So West Ham can do this. In fact, given our opinions, if you like, of the board at times and our potentially, occasionally dodgy options taken or suspicions, I'm a little bit surprised we haven't done more of it, frankly. It's not something that happens a lot in the Premier League. It mostly happens in Spain and Italy, but it actually opens up a world of possibilities. So I won't give you too many examples, but we know that Arsenal are genuinely interested in Felipe. I'm as surprised as you, but they are. So if we went to Arsenal and we're looking at players that they don't necessarily value as much or may not want to keep around, or players that just simply want to look at a move, if we took some of them on that would fill positions we need, and they were to take on Felipe, then you can come to an agreement. Now, part of that is down to, in an exchange, it's not so much about the true value of a player, it's almost about the profile of a player. And players like Felipe and Manuel and Yamo and all the others have big profile. So you can afford to, from a club basis, if you're buying a player with a big profile, but also getting sales of players that your fans don't see as big profiles, there's a benefit that goes on aside from the financial one. The difficulty in these deals is they're complex. We know how difficult one transfer is to do. You're trying to do two transfers at the same time, trying to get two players to agree to two moves at the same time, handling all the details of their wages, whatever conditions on their contracts, all those sorts of things are all happening at once, as well as two clubs agreeing on the values of these players, which are flexible and really a question of how much they can do to benefit both teams. There are some possibilities there that we can look at. Reece Nelson, for example, could be an interesting swap for Felipe Anderson. Maybe Ainsley Maitland-Niles could also be one of those sorts of things. Maybe both, depending on how you do deals. I know these are just examples. I'm not suggesting that these things are going to happen. But if there are players that other teams don't value, or players that have similar profile and similar wages even, you could look at doing all sorts of things. In the window, we already heard that Napoli had some interest in Felipe, and they decided, they were interested, but they're not going to buy him because we're asking more than he's worth at the moment, and they don't need him desperately. But they proposed, there was rumours that they were suggesting of a transfer for Irving Lozano, the Mexican international. Very similar players, quality player, Irving Lozano. Felipe Anderson quality, frankly. A little bit slighter, but he hasn't settled in the Serie A. He's never found it comfortable, and he and Gattuso don't always see eye to eye. So he needs a move. Felipe could do a move, and he's desperate to go back to Italy. Similar players, similar wages, similar profile. Now, when you start to look at clubs like that and players like that, that would be within the realm of possibility, loosely, there are all sorts of things we could look to do in other positions that could really benefit West Ham. I know who our board are and how unlikely all these things are, but frankly, things are getting desperate. Maybe it's time to consider some alternative options.